Hey there! Today we're jumping into some math that honestly, you're actually gonna use. We're talking about those financial safety nets, things like unemployment and Social Security. These are systems designed to have your back when you stop working, whether it's for a little while or for good. So let's dive right in.
Okay, let's just imagine for a second. You land a job, you've been there a few years, things are going great, and then boom, the company has to make cutbacks and your job is gone. Suddenly, that paycheck you've been counting on just stops. Kind of scary, right? So, what do? How are you supposed to pay your bills while you hunt for a new job? Well, that's exactly what we're digging into today.
So here's what we've got on tap. We'll kick things off with what happens when that paycheck disappears. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of unemployment insurance and the Social Security system. And to wrap it up, you'll get a chance to try it all out for yourself. The good news is, if you lose a job and it wasn't your fault, you're not totally left on your own. There are systems in place, you can think of them as financial safety nets, that are built to help you bridge that gap. And two of the biggest ones are unemployment insurance and Social Security.
All right, first up is something called unemployment insurance, or just UI for short. The best way to think about it, it's like a temporary paycheck. It's a program that gives you some money to live on while you're out there looking for a new gig after being laid off. But there are a couple of big catches. It has to be no fault of your own, so you can't have just quit, and you have to prove you're actually trying to find a new job.
Okay, this is a big one. A super common misconception is that UI is something that gets taken out of your paycheck. Makes sense, right? Kind of like health insurance. But nope, that's not how it works. Your employer is actually the one paying for it. They pay into a state fund as a safety net for their employees. Pretty cool, huh?
So, how much money are we talking about? It's not just a random number. The amount you get is actually calculated based on how much you were earning before. Let's break down exactly how that math works, and we'll use Texas as our example.
In Texas, it's a pretty simple three-step process. First, they look at your total earnings over the last year. Easy enough. Second, they calculate 1% of that number. And third, this part's really important, they check to see if that number falls between the state's minimum and maximum payout. These limits exist to make sure the system stays fair and has enough money to help everyone who needs it. All right, time to see this in action. Let's do one together. Meet Corey. He was making a decent salary in Texas, but then his company had to do some cutbacks. I'm going to walk you through how to figure out his weekly unemployment benefit step by step. Okay, step one is just finding the starting number. The problem tells us that Corey earned $56,640 last year. That's the number we're going to work with. Now for step two, we just need to find 1% of that. Remember, to find 1% of a number, you just multiply it by 0.01. So we take $56,640 times 0.01, and that gives us $566.40. And here comes that crucial third step. We have to compare our number, $566.40, to the maximum amount the state of Texas will pay, which is $426 a week. Well, as you can see, our calculation is higher than the state's max. So what does that mean for Corey? It means that even though our math came out to over $500, Corey is going to get the state maximum, which is $426 per week. That's the cap. This rule is what keeps the whole system balanced. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. We've talked about a temporary safety net. Now let's talk about a much more long-term one, Social Security. If you've ever gotten a real paycheck, you've probably seen a little deduction called FICA. Well, that's what we're about to demystify. So what in the world is Social Security? Unlike unemployment, which your boss pays for, Social Security is something you pay into with every single paycheck. Those payments are the FICA taxes. They go into a giant federal fund that provides you with an income later on, like when you retire or if you ever become disabled and can't work. So FICA is actually two things. You've got the Social Security tax, which is 4.2% of your pay, and the Medicare tax, which is 1.45%. Now, one really important thing to notice is that there's a limit for Social Security. Back in 2012, for example, you only paid that tax on the first $110,100 you earned. But for Medicare, nope, there's no limit at all. All right, let's do a we do problem. This is Carlos. He earns $1,759 bi-weekly. That just means he gets a paycheck every 2 weeks. Our mission is to figure out how much he pays in Social Security taxes over a whole year. Let's tackle this together. So before we can find his yearly tax, we need to know his yearly salary. If he gets paid every 2 weeks and there are 52 weeks in a year, how many paychecks is that? Go ahead and pause right here and see if you can calculate his total annual salary. How'd you do? If you get paid every 2 weeks, that comes out to 26 paychecks a year. So all we do is multiply his paycheck amount, $1,759, by 26. And that gives us an annual salary of $45,734. Awesome job.
Perfect. Now we have the number we need to answer the real question. How much does Carlos pay in Social Security tax for the entire year? The tax rate is 4.2%. Why don't you pause one more time and see if you can figure out the final answer?
All right, let's walk through it. Now, you could just multiply his annual salary by 4.2%. But the way payroll systems actually do it, which is a bit more precise, is they calculate the tax on each individual paycheck. So we take his biweekly pay, $1,759, and multiply it by 0.042. That's $73.88 per check. Then multiply that by 26 paychecks, and we get a grand total of $1,902.88 for the year. See how those small amounts really add up?
Okay, you've seen how it all works. We've defined the big ideas, we've walked through examples for both UI and Social Security. So now it's your turn to put it all together. Here's your scenario. Meet Susie. Last year, she earned $28,500. Now, based on everything we've covered, what will her weekly unemployment benefit be? Take a minute, work through the steps we used for Corey, and see what you come up with. And hey, here's a little hint to get you started. Don't forget that 3-step process for unemployment. And pay close attention to that 3rd step, okay? Comparing your number to the state limits is absolutely key.
Awesome work today. Before we wrap up, let's just quickly recap the big ideas. Remember, unemployment insurance is that temporary safety net, and your employer pays for it. Social Security is your long-term retirement plan that you pay for. Both systems have their own rules and limits, and honestly, knowing how this math works gives you so much more control over your own financial life. At the end of the day, this is so much more than just numbers on a screen. Whether you're trying to understand your first pay stub, plan for your future, or get through a tough spot like losing a job, understanding this money math is the first, most powerful step you can take toward building your own financial security. Thanks so much for learning with me today.